Hello and welcome to Post-Burnout.com interviews. Post-Burnout.com is a culture website dedicated to venerating burnt-out artists the world over. My name is Aaron Kavanagh and I'm the website's founder and editor-in-chief. This is our website's podcast where we publish the full interviews from our site's articles and sometimes release exclusive episodes. In this edition of Post-Burnout.com interviews, Gabriel Gaba of the Dublin-based gaze metal band Trice discusses moving to Ireland from Brazil, getting into post-rock and shoegaze and incorporating them into metal, how Trice was formed between him and John O'Kelly, whom he had worked with years prior, their debut EP To Rise You Seek the End, the differences between the Irish and Brazilian music scenes, and much more. Hey Gabriel, how's it going? You alright?
Very good. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, this is definitely not our first time setting this up. So, um, I was gonna ask because there's a lot to talk about with this current project. So I think maybe just as like a starting off point, I know you're like very seasoned. I know John, who you work with, is also very seasoned. It's just us here speaking, but maybe if you could talk a little bit about your background then, and maybe the chronology of your career, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So, well, I moved to Ireland in 2012.
Hmm.
And then at the time I started, I was always playing in bands in Brazil as well. I'm from Brazil.
Hmm. Which
Um,
part?
sorry?
Which part?
Oh, the south, the southernmost state. But I used to live in São Paulo before I
Yeah.
came here. Um, so yeah, so initially I was just playing in like cover bands and stuff like that, like everyone does, I suppose. And then later on, I ended up joining a grunge band that played originals, and that would have been I think 2013, and that's how I met John actually. So we actually go way back, but the way I met him was that he was the recording engineer and producer of the first EP that I did with that grunge band, and we recorded it at Westland Studios, which is a
Can you say the name of them or like is it the name of the band?
oh yeah, sorry, of course, it's Divide of Everything.
Perfect. No, it's
Uh,
just I didn't know. Sometimes when people talk about former projects, they're a little sometimes it can be a little problematic.
oh no, not at all.
So
No,
yeah.
that I actually I that's one thing, like I never had any problem with any of my past bands. Like I'm still good friends with
Yeah,
everyone.
that's cool.
Um, but yeah, so that's how I met John. We recorded an EP at Westland Studios, and he worked there. But like we didn't become friends or anything. We were just like acquaintances,
Hmm.
and just like Facebook connection. And it's kind of funny that like 10 years later, he would be like the perfect partner to join me in this project. But yeah, so after I had that grunge band for a while, and that's when I really started playing originals in earnest here in Ireland. And after a few years with that band, I joined helped to form a progressive metal band called Sectile here in Dublin.
Yeah.
um, and that would have been 2016, and that band lasted until you know immediately after the pandemic.
Mm.
So that's, yeah, it was ironic that we managed to keep going during the pandemic, like working remotely, and when the pandemic ended, and we could like sort of reconvene, and then the band just disintegrated. But
Now that's actually quite common because like then like because people think like oh during the lockdowns like bands would kind of fizzle out and that definitely did happen, but actually there is something to be said about once the pandemic ended and lockdowns kind of ended, like people then had to either go back to work or find a new job, like whatever their circumstance was at that point. So a lot of people actually did get kind of busy like after the pandemic and couldn't commit to projects then. It's actually pretty common to be like,
yeah,
yeah, we
yeah,
made it work during the pandemic, but it was kind of afterwards that it all went to hell.
yeah, that actually makes sense, because yeah, like everyone's lives kind of changed during the pandemic,
Hmm.
and then when it was over, you get back together and then realize that your circumstances changed, and maybe like
Right.
it just doesn't work anymore. And that was kind of what happened with us. So it wasn't any animosity or anything. But one thing that happened with that was that the guitarist for that band, Mark, he was the guy that wrote pretty much all the material in terms of the instrumentation. And I wrote the lyrics and vocal lines, and then we sort of bounced ideas off of each other, and that's how the songs got written, like the before they were brought to the band. And Mark, after that period of the pandemic, he decided to move to Canada. So that's when I found myself, basically on my own to write songs again. And at that period, I was kind of like already like more interested in post rock and shoegaze and post metal, the more ambient stuff, as opposed to prog, like the more sort of technically, as you would think of prog. Which came in handy because if I were on my own trying to write prog, I couldn't because I can't play it.
Yeah.
I'm just not good enough. So yeah. So at that time, I mean, everything was very slow. I remember at the time because, I mean, it was very hard to form a new band and to find musicians or anything because people were still very iffy about, doing those things.
Restrictions, yeah.
And I remember like trying to talk to mates, sort of reconnecting with mates, trying to see if anything worked. But at the end of the day, like what I had in mind, and I suppose like now, if people go and listen to what Trist is doing, you can like it's a cross genre thing, and it's very hard to express that to people unless you write it and show it.
Yeah.
So it was like, yeah, because I already had these ideas in my head, like the way like how I wanted, the kind of stuff that I wanted to write basically and sing on. It was just at that point I just had to start writing myself. So like I've always played the guitar, but I was never really like extremely dedicated to it.
Well, what would your main instrument in the other projects?
It was just vocals.
Vocals, okay.
I only sang like I never really like except for like once or twice in my life played guitar and sang live. So I've always been the kind of vocalist that like I come from the sort of classic heavy metal hard rock school of walking around the stage and sort of moving
Yeah.
a lot with a bit of theatrics and stuff. So I was always that kind of vocalist. And in the context of playing, a sort of post black, post rock, post metal, that even like that wasn't going to be a thing. So I already knew that even if I weren't playing guitar in this project, I would still have to, adapt my style. So it was things. I think everything kind of converged to me just picking up the guitar and start writing the songs myself and formatting the ideas for this project. And that would have been maybe 2022 at that point. Like,
Yep.
And then after I had a few demos, I just posted them online and just made a couple of posts on social media, just saying, "Hey guys, I want to form a post rock band. Uh, you know, if anyone is interested, give me a shout." And then John reached out. So that's how we became just reconnected. And I was delighted. It's like John isn't here with us tonight, unfortunately, because he had something else going on. But I couldn't imagine at the time that he'd be interested in being in a band with me. Just because we like didn't really have that much contact up until that point. But I knew he had great taste in music because he was the only other guy that I know in Ireland who likes IMX, which is this artist that's fantastic. And I knew it from like his Facebook from posts. So I think like over the years, our interaction was like, oh, he posted something about IMX, and then I would go and comment, or other bands, sort of, post metal, like Death Heaven, whatever, like this kind of band. Those were like, I think whenever one of us did that kind of post, the other would go and comment and say something. So that was like I think he knew that he kind of knew my taste, and I knew his. So when he reached out, and I knew that like he'd be a fantastic musician, and he has obviously all the background for recording and everything. I was like, well, yeah, man, let's chat and see what's up. So we just met for drinks, hit it off straight away, and been playing together since, and it worked out really well.
Right, so there's a lot to go on based on what you were saying. So actually, as you were talking, I was writing some stuff down, that I thought would be kind of interesting topics to discuss. So I'll start with this. So you mentioned you're from Brazil, and one
Yeah,
thing I'm always interested in, I've never actually been to Brazil. I'd love to go. First of all, I mean, there's like I don't know if people outside of Ireland know this, especially in Dublin. There's like a very sizable Brazilian diaspora, so I know like
absolutely.
plenty
Yeah,
of Brazilian people like basically throughout my life. And one thing when I look at like gig footage from like Brazil, it seems like correct me if this is wrong. This might just be the perception that I have, but like it seems that like bands are like four times bigger in like South America in general, not just Brazil, but like Argentina, Chile, than they are like seemingly in the rest of the world. So like a band, for example, that would be playing a club in Europe or the US or whatever is playing a theater. A band that would play a theater is playing like an
yeah,
amphitheater,
yeah.
arena, stadium. Is that a fair assessment? I've always wanted to ask a Brazilian
Absolutely,
musician.
yeah, yeah. There are, like Brazil is a continental size country. There's
Yeah,
220 million people there, so it's kind of like the case that you can get a good audience for anything because you just
yeah.
have the numbers. Like, there's always going to be a sufficient number of people who are going to love one thing. So I think that's it. It's a little bit of that, and also I think that it's also sort of a cultural and historical thing in the sense that up until the late 90s, early 2000s, it was very hard to have
Yeah,
like big acts or any or big and small acts both to play in Brazil. It's too expensive. You had all the economical problems and stuff. So and then obviously like small bands couldn't go because it wasn't like they couldn't make enough money out of it. And then the bigger bands sometimes wouldn't go because it's just an enormous expense, and you couldn't have the guarantee. So with few exceptions, you wouldn't have that many bands going. So once a band actually went, the response was always enormous.
yeah,
So it's like when you go to a gig there, I think like that's what most artists say, and it's just like just the audience's reaction is like we just like scream and shout and jump, and
yeah,
like people lose their shit at gigs, and
yeah,
then sometimes, and that surprises, I think, a lot of artists. They're just like, wow, like it's an incredible energy. They have bands like Iron Maiden always speaks about that. Like they went to Brazil in Rock in Rio 1, so that would
Mhm.
be 85. And it was like, I don't remember how, it was like 400,000 people or some shit like that, like 300,000, like it was an
Yeah,
enormous crowd. And they were like, oh my god, and they always go back to Brazil and recorded albums there and stuff, just because live albums, because
yeah,
of that reaction. And you kind of get that, I think, across South America, for I think similar reasons. And it's sort of like, even though we have many more gigs nowadays, like bands really like started to explore that market in the past 20 years or so. I think the reaction of the audience is still very much the same. So people kind of know that they'll, if you
be
have
welcome.
yeah, you're going to get a great welcome there. And they've been putting on some pretty sort of like reasonably sized festivals in Brazil now. Not
Yeah,
in addition to sort of Rock in Rio and the more established ones, but even you have like Metal and Rock have been like, you have some pretty interesting festivals going on. They always get a good crowd. So that's it. Yeah, it's just like people are just, I suppose, happy to have the artists there.
Yeah, I remember one time watching like footage of the Rolling Stones playing in Rio,
Yeah,
and I think it was like a million. Like the attendance was like a million. It's like one of the biggest gigs like ever, like just in terms of attendance. And I was
yeah,
watching there's footage of it on YouTube if you want to look it up. But like I'm looking at this big crowd, and like when you're watching it, it's like amazing. But like maybe this is just my old man brain now. But like I was just thinking, man, I'd hate to be like leaving after that. When you're
yeah,
exiting
yeah.
with a million people, I'd be like, oh my God.
Yeah, I think those enormous gigs there were like those they were free at the
Attendance,
beach,
yeah.
like in Copacabana beach. Um, like we had like I think a couple of years ago they had a Madonna gig there as well, and it was the same, like just like an enormous amount of people. Um, but yeah, I mean, as far as I know, those things actually go down really well
Yeah.
uh when they happen. So, and obviously like the artist, like, if it's a free concert, it's paid by like the city
The
hall,
government.
whatever, just
Yeah.
to kind of like create an event to promote the city. So yeah, you just have these enormous events, and I think for the artists it's also like an interesting, like, maybe I wouldn't say unique, but it's not an experience that they get every day. So I think that makes it memorable for them. So that's why you see them always mentioning it.
Well, when you came to Dublin, how did you find the kind of music scene here in contrast? Because like here, I think it's like very much akin to like Europe or the UK or even the US, like just in terms of like audience attendance, venues, things like that. I mean, it seems like we're much more in line with with like Europe and the US and Canada and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So, how did you find that? Like, did it feel smaller? Did it feel like less enthusiastic, or how's it for you?
Um, there's I mean, it's obviously very different, but I think there's uh, um, things that are better, things that are worse, I suppose. So, like for me, because I've always liked music that's sung in English, and like listening to metal, hard rock,
Yeah,
just these genres that are, uh, you know, they are sung in English typically, and the kind of singing that I do, like with the high notes and stuff, that's not really a thing in Brazil for local artists. It's
hmm
something that, even though you have foreign artists playing big gigs there, doing this kind of music locally for bands, it's not very very easy to, if you're singing in English, it's just like it limits your audience a lot. So it
sure.
was always like a point of frustration for me, because the music that I liked to play was, like heavy music and that kind of singing. And there's always a pressure to do it in Portuguese, and it doesn't really work the
Yeah,
same. So that was, to me, the number one thing that I liked the most about moving here, was that, okay, like now I can sing in English and like and dedicate to the genres that I like, as opposed to having to kind of adapt, just to have um, a minimal platform, like it was back when I was living there. So I was happy that way. And one thing um, that ended up working to my advantage here was just, yeah, like this style of singing that I do, again, like with the high notes and the sort of belting. It's especially in in like clean singing in the context of heavy metal. That's not something that you get so much here. Like
hmm
most metal bands, or heavy bands, they would have like harsh vocals, just like the
yeah,
screaming, or more like
gargling kind of.
lower tone vocals.
Yeah,
um and I mean, that's just I don't know the explanation for that. It's just a cultural thing, I suppose.
sure.
But yeah, like it was interesting because in Brazil, like in the underground scene, especially like in Sao Paulo, you would have like dozens, no, not dozens, like you would have thousands of guys who can sing like me, and much better, just with that same kind of style. Because culturally, what we do have in terms of, um like foreign
Influence.
Not foreign, but yeah, the foreign influence would be that kind of singing. And we had like there was let's say, because the most famous metal band from Brazil is obviously Sepultura, but
Same with that too. Yeah.
the second most famous would be Angra.
Yeah.
And they're obviously they're much more niche than Sepultura, but they would be like a symphonic power metal thing. And the original vocalist for Angra was famous for singing extremely high.
Yeah.
And he was very famous in Brazil, and he was like a cultural icon. The band and himself uh, in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I think that kind of created a generation of vocalists who would sing high because of his influence. So you have so like if you go to Sao Paulo and yeah, just look in the underground scene, you're going to find a lot of people who can do everything that I can and much more. But here in Ireland, just there weren't that many, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, and and for just sheer luck, he got people's attention. So from the start, I was always like, uh, um, there were always bands interested in working with me, which I thought was very flattering. But yeah, it was just I think those were the two main things that I found. Like in Sao Paulo was just another guy, but here because the scene is smaller and you have this stylistical difference, somehow I was able to draw attention. Obviously I'm talking in an extremely small scale. When I say draw
Sure.
attention, it's just like in the
Yeah,
underground.
I understand the
Yeah,
local
yeah,
scene.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, before I move on to my next question, I just wanted to say, did you see that Sepultura are actually doing their last European show in Dublin?
Yeah, I saw that.
It's
Yeah, it
last
was
one.
just
Yeah, that's
announced.
pretty
Yeah,
good. I
yeah,
should
yeah,
check them out. I've actually never got a chance to see them, and they were always here. They were like always playing, but I just never, I
yeah,
don't know what for whatever reason. So yeah,
yeah.
I'll check them out.
They will always come to Dublin in their European tours. I actually never saw them either, and I'm Brazilian.
Oh well,
So I may try to go to that last one just
I
to
think I have to.
yeah, just to say I was there.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of cool. Like, what I love is that I find that like because I go to like a lot of the smaller like punk shows or underground shows, like in some of the venues, and what's interesting is that like there's always like a huge contingent of Brazilian people there. Like I remember a couple of years ago, probably 22, I went to see Less Than Jake, and someone had a Brazilian flag, and he was like. Oh, do we have any Brazilians tonight? And then, like half the room cheered. And like,
Yeah,
dude, last year I went to see like Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, right? Who I would consider like a pretty well-known punk band,
yeah,
and it was at the Academy, and like, dude, it was like maybe a third. It was like I felt bad. It was like maybe like I don't know. I think the club holds like 800 people, and there was maybe like 50 there. Like, and but dude, like most of them were like Brazilian, and it's like they were kind of
yeah.
keeping the scene up. And like, I love it because like I find that you know their music taste is kind of akin to mine in a way.
Nice.
There's that
Yeah,
appreciation. That's so I always love that because like yeah, I think like if you're into like the metal or the punk scenes or anything like that in Ireland, like you're gonna absolutely like make friends with Brazilian people, you know?
absolutely. And yeah, it's kind of like I was saying. You still here you have access to so many more gigs.
Yeah,
So people like it's one of the things like if you're from South America and you move to a European country and you're a person who's invested in music, uh going to a lot of gigs is it's one of the main things you're going to do, and that's what I try to do. Like I didn't go to as many, nearly half as many gigs in Brazil as I do here. Like I and
yeah,
it's like um proportionally also cheaper, like in terms of
yeah,
how much it means of your how much of your income you need to set aside to go to a gig here is much more affordable, even when
yeah.
even with when it's like bigger events with more expensive tickets. So no, definitely like it. I think that's one of the reasons why people like not every Brazilian person is here to stay. So if you're here just for a few years, you're gonna make the most of it. And one of the things you're gonna do is go to a lot of gigs.
What was your decision to come to Ireland?
Um, well, when I was living in São Paulo, it was me and my wife. She's also Brazilian,
Hmm.
so just like working. the usual like 10, 12 hours a day, which is sort of the work ethics in Sao Paulo in the corporate world. We're both graphic designers. So yeah, you're just like working a lot. You're stuck in traffic all the time. So after a few years, like we spent 8 years in Sao Paulo before moving here, and we just wanted a change of scenery. Um, and we just like we had been saving some money and just like let's just go and spend a year in Europe. And we chose Ireland because of the language, basically,
Yeah.
because I already spoke almost fluent English. Um, and yeah, like it was sort of easy enough to get the visa and everything. Um, so that was basically the reason why we chose Ireland specifically. But then we just stayed because once we got here, we managed to get work visas and started working in our field. And yeah, once you have that, you just like, well, let's stay for as long as
Yeah.
this works. And it just worked out. So we're still here. So it's been almost 14 years now.
Perfect.
Yeah,
And I also wanted to ask something. Sorry, I'm just taking like a bunch of notes, so like things
yeah,
might
of
be
course. Yeah, no, that's great.
disjointed a little. You were mentioned, when you started doing originals, you were much more drawn to English over Portuguese. But something you're saying there, like English language music isn't really popular in Brazil. It's sort of they want Portuguese. But I was wondering, like, even if you're just like say look at South America as like a continent, as somewhere that could tour, can Portuguese artists go to like the Spanish speaking countries and still perform, or is it very territorial? Like if a Spanish speaking artist came to Brazil, would they get much traction, or is there any kind of like difficulty with those like language barriers? And is that kind of why you might be drawn to English?
Yeah. So just, I suppose, just to sort of clarify what I meant in terms of English speaking artists not being popular in Brazil, I meant that if you're a local Brazilian band and you're
Yeah.
singing in English, that's what makes it a barrier, because people are happy to, like you have, like we were discussing before, you have an enormous audience for foreign artists. It's just that if you're local and you're trying to sing in English, then it's just not equally accepted. So that's really the barrier. But yeah, like to your point, yeah, it does happen. Of course, there's it's always been, you know, Brazil is kind of odd in that way that all the rest of South America speaks Spanish, and we're the only country that speaks Portuguese. And
And French, and French.
uh,
French Guana.
oh
French
yeah,
Guana.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, but like in terms of like the size of the country, like Brazil is the largest country in the continent, and but we're the only one that doesn't speak the same language as the others. So they're like, ideally, like I think it's one of the things that in Brazil that we should have more a better contact with the rest of Latin America. Like there should be a better exchange. We should be, should speak Spanish better. There should be more connection there. But for some reason, it's just not. Maybe just because of the sheer size of the country, it's just not as connected as you would expect. But it
Mhm.
does happen. Like you have sometimes you have Spanish speaking artists that grow big, that get big in Brazil. A song becomes a hit, whatever. We have like, there's in Brazil, it's one of the, or at least it used to be one of the biggest ways that a musician would get big is to, like, if one of your songs is picked up by one of the soap operas, because we have like these,
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
it's a very traditional cultural thing there, like it's huge, and like you get played a lot. So sometimes you have like artists from Argentina or Uruguay or whatever, or Mexico, who would you know get a hit in Brazil like that. Or even like one funny story actually, Shakira, like the super
Yeah, yeah.
mega star, right?
Yeah.
um so she's from, I think, Colombia, if I'm not mistaken.
That
uh
sounds right. Yeah.
and before she was like a mega star, in the United States, and around the globe. She was just, a young girl singing romantic ballads in Spanish. So before, yeah, like, so she literally played a gig in my hometown in this
Oh, really?
sort of local sports
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
And she had like even like a couple of local hits there in Brazil, and it's just like, oh, it's just Shakira, just this girl. And then like, I don't know, 10 years later, she's like global megastar.
Were you at that
Uh
show?
I wasn't, no, I was too young. Like I was a child when that happened. But no, it's crazy, like, like you would never expect, because much like her, you would artists like, or like Ricky Martin was kind of similar
Yeah.
because he was the Menudo, and Menudo had songs in Brazil, and then obviously he the same path, like he became an international star after
Global
that. So
superstar.
yeah, so I mean, it does happen, that you would have this some artists who would like do this connection with the other countries, Spanish, Portuguese, and as well, like soap operas and movies, that kind of stuff also gets, you know it goes around, country to country, like they become popular and stuff in the other countries, but less than you would expect, I think.
Sorry, dude, I'm gonna keep asking.
Yeah.
If I'm getting annoying, you can tell me to
Oh
stop.
no, I
I'm just
like
fascinated.
I like talking, so yeah, just work away.
Yeah, no, because I do want to get into your project, but I just had one final
No,
question,
yeah.
uh, just based on what you're saying there. Because one thing I think that kind of sucks a little bit about the Irish music scene for younger fans, because I remember being a teenager and wanting to go to shows, and like really, it's only kind of theaters and arenas that kind of like let under 18s in. Like all the clubs in Ireland are like over 18. Maybe sometimes you'll get like a matinee show where they'll let like 14-year-olds up every now and again. Like the Academy
Mhm.
on Middle Abbey Street will sometimes do like a 14 plus show and things like that. So there were like little options here and there, but for the most part, it was like you had to be 18.
Yeah.
In Brazil, are things more all ages, or is it still age restricted?
um I think technically it's age restricted,
Hmm.
but I don't know what it's like now in terms of enforcement of that.
Sure.
It certainly wasn't extremely well enforced when we were growing up. Like I like
Yeah, because I want kids to see shows, get
yeah,
inspired and make
like,
good music.
so no, there's been, I was going into venues to see shows before I was 18 for sure. And I would say that, like, depending on the size of the venue, what kind of place it is, or like what city, you would still get away with that. But no, for the, like, if you go to, like, to a big show in Sao Paulo, like an arena show, or even sort of a more sort of higher profile, theater kind of show, I think they would check your ID to make sure, like, if you can come in or not. I'd be surprised if they didn't. But yeah, you could get away with like, I went to, like, my first international metal show was this band that I still love called Sabotage. They're from the United States, and they were playing in the capital of my home state, so, which was like a completely, single occurrence in life. So, and I went, like, me and my other mate, we were in high school, so I would have been, like, I think possibly 16, and I just, went inside and saw the gig. It was fine. Like, nobody tried to block us or anything. Um, I think that if we had tried to buy alcohol, they would have
Yeah.
said no. But
Yeah, don't push your luck.
yeah, but we didn't try. But I think that, yeah, like at that time, it was just
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, I remember when I was like 16, I tried to get into an over 18 show and they carded us and we didn't have a card and it became this ordeal. So I was like scared off of going to over 18 shows. And then like when I was 17, I went to two other clubs. I'm not gonna say the name of them because I don't get them in trouble. But they didn't care. So
Yeah.
like I was able to get in. I was like, I could have been doing this all this time. Are you serious? Like I could have been seeing because like I would always miss shows because it was like, oh, it's over 18s, you know. The
Mm.
one time I tried it, it was like it was really embarrassing because it was like me and my friend were like 16. We're like, okay, we'll grow our beards out. You know, that was our thing. They won't ask if we grow our beards out, so we had these like shitty like teenage beards. You know what I mean? Like where it's like, you know, kind of like patchy and not really grown out, and we kind of go up and like, hey, you know?
Yeah, look, I would have, yeah, I would have done the same. Like you want to see the bands, you know.
Yeah,
So you do what you have to do. Like if it sticks, then great.
yeah. So let's talk about I want to make sure I'm getting the pronunciation correct. Trist.
It's Trist.
Trist. My
Trist.
apologies,
Yeah, yeah,
Trist.
yeah.
So Trist is a very interesting project because, like as you mentioned, it has all these like different influences, like you know, shoegaze. You mentioned, I was getting like post metal. You were mentioning black metal. I was also getting like bits of doom in there.
Yeah.
You know, I was getting like it's really like therapy that came uh, uh in on the 13th as we're speaking. So it came out on the 13th November. Um, like 33 minutes, like six song EP, 33 minutes, and you really go on a journey. And I was really interested in the release pattern you did for this. So I wrote down the order just to make sure I got it right. So in July, you released The Long Journey, which I think was the right decision because I think that really is that one song in particular really is a thesis statement for what this project is, which shows the versatility, which shows all the elements you're coming out. Pipe Dream, which came out afterwards, I think is like a very good follow up. It's like, okay, it's very much in the vein. And then Vessel in October, which came out a month
Mm-hmm.
before the EP, really kind of goes, actually, you don't know what to expect on this. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
love this. So, um, let's start with. So, I want to talk a bit about the release and scheduling that, but I also just want to talk about the versatility on the record because, um, you know, what were you kind of listening to? Like, it seems like a really unique palette of interests that are kind of coming together. So, maybe if you could talk about that.
Yeah, of course. So, one of uh, my ideas when I started, thinking about this project was because I was like, I love the band Cult of Luna. They're a post-metal band, but they use only harsh vocals. Like, there's no
Yeah,
cleans, the exception of like passages here and there, but it's not really a thing that's part of their music. And even though like I listen to a lot of metal, like I sing mostly cleans, and most of the time I prefer to listen to music with clean vocals. So the harsh, like the screaming, like the black metal shrieking, was more of an acquired taste for me.
sure.
Because I just love the music itself so much, so you just, once you get used to that barrier that the sort of screaming vocals have, you're able to better enjoy the music. But I always had this thing, like, because I always sang clean, and I'm much better at singing clean than I am at screaming. So I kind of wanted to do that kind of music, but with a focus in the clean singing. um and again, like all those, like, so what kind of bands would have been like Deaf Heaven, Alcest, Holy Fawn.
I think Def
uh,
Evans probably the one I was thinking of too when I was listening to it.
yeah, I think they're one of the most popular ones in the genre. But one thing that's like, because you have bands like Alcest, like they do have a mix of clean and harsh vocals, but the cleans, they're very kind of shoegazy style, the sort of like low, um not low profile, but just, yeah, kind of quiet. And it's not really very energetic like the clean passages. They're kind of quiet, and which is kind of what you have in shoegaze. It's more of a texture kind of clean
Yeah.
vocal. um Whereas my style, because I come from this more old school metal hard rock thing,
Hmm.
um I have this sort of, like, to sing like belting, like to sing with a sort of more powerful vocal, and you don't really get a lot of post metal or post rock with that kind of singing. So it's either like harsh vocals or just sort of more quiet vocals. So
Yep.
this idea was forming in my mind that it's just like to kind of start writing the songs that I wanted to listen to,
Yep.
which would have been like some of those influences, like how would they sound if they had a vocalist like me, like who sang with a style that's more focused on the clean vocals. um and obviously, like, next to that, I also had like a lot of the whispery falsetto thing, that I picked up from goth bands like him, which was a band that I used to really like in the early 2000s. And some people think it's from Radiohead. It's not really. It's from him, Ville Valo. And then obviously Jeff Buckley, that I was a massive fan as well, and like, so he had that like beautiful falsetto, and that's something that I
Yeah.
was always like a big influence for me to sort of try to emulate. So yeah, I had all these ideas in my head about just mixing together all my influences in one thing and just see how it goes, like, and then to write these songs that just go from one section to the other, and they're all kind of different, but then you just need to, and then you just find strategic points to tie them together. So that's kind of how the thought process was. um and it was the same with Vessel, like, because it is probably the most sort of different song of the bunch, at least for the first half. And that was like, I also like this singer songwriter called Ry X a lot. Like, I just think he's phenomenal. I love his voice, I love his songs. He's much more like, Bon Iver, the kind of stuff, Novo More, those guys that just have this sort of very melancholic, sort of folky indie folk kind
Yeah.
of kind of writing and singing. And I always thought, like, when I'm listening to those guys, those songs, especially Ryax, because he has a little bit of electronics in it as well, like, those songs, they have a bit of a crescendo, but they never explode because they're not like metal artists, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And that,
Ellie Smith does that too.
yeah. So when you're listening, like, I listen to a lot of post rock as well. So post rock, post metal, like, it's all about the crescendo. Like, you have these instrumental sections that just keep growing and growing and growing, and then
You have to release attention, kind
yeah.
of.
And then I was thinking, like, yeah, I mean, you could go from sort of an extreme like Ryax, that's very sort of minimalistic, all the way to, Death Heaven with blast beats. So I kind of wanted to, yeah, just go from one extreme to the other in the same song, because sometimes you see artists that do stuff like, there was like the vocalist of Agriculture, which is a band that they're a black gaze band as well. And he put out a solo album. I won't remember the name. I don't even remember his name, but he put out a solo album last year that was kind of like, A and B sides, and then like A was all acoustic folk songs and B all black metal,
Yeah.
in the same album. And I was like, why not both? Like, just go,
Yeah.
like, write a song that just has both things. So those were, yeah, the ideas in my head, to just mix all these influences in this as part of the same songs. And then when John got on board, yeah, he was into the same idea, and he has his own project called Inner Circles, which is sort of a dark shoegaze thing, perhaps with a little bit more sort of 80s goth vibe to it in the mix. So he brought like the perfect influences to balance it out, and he would be really much more into classic shoegaze, like, My Bloody Valentine and Slow Dive, more so than I am. Whereas, like, I came into shoegaze via metal, via black gaze, post black metal, and post rock. Whereas he listened to old school shoegaze, and at the same time he also listened to the same kind of stuff that I do. So yeah, when he started writing songs, for the same project, I think everything aligned. yeah, and that's how we landed on this.
Before I go into the songwriting, as I did want to mention, I also wanted to shout out, the record label Sargent House. I think they're very much doing the kind of like thing you're talking about, which is like incorporating the kind of metal and kind of more acousticy stuff. I mean, I think what they're doing is like really like artistically, like the whole label, like everyone on their
Hmm.
roster, it's just like so diverse in that sense. I mean, it really shows you the versatility, I think, of metal music, and how cerebral it can be, and how diverse and expansive it can be, Because like I think like for a lot of people when it comes to metal, there are some people I disagree with this completely, but there are some people who will make the argument, well, it all sounds the same. And I'm like, no, you can't say like Metallica sounds like System of a Down or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't say that like all these projects do. I think there's a lot of versatility in the range, and I think what they're doing as a label is sort of showcasing that more, just like showcasing this is an intellectual um form of music as is classical music. They're
Yeah.
really kind of trying to show off the artistry of metal music, I think. So I just wanted to shout out that record label, Sargent House. I think they're really good. I'm not sure like how familiar you are with their stuff, but
Yeah, I know them. Like they're kind of a boutique kind of label. So
sure.
you would you like that's the kind of stuff you would expect from them. I think um Phoebe Bridgers wasn't she on Sargent
Oh, was she
House
on
at
there?
one point?
Maybe. It wouldn't surprise me. She probably was. I
Uh,
don't know offhand.
I think she was at one point at least.
Yeah.
So yeah, it metal, like there's so much to it. And I would, like when you hear people say that, oh, it all sounds the same, whatever. I mean, that's
Well, I think
I
there are
don't,
people who don't
yeah,
really engage with
that,
it.
yeah, like I don't mind that. Like I don't really worry about that because it's obviously, people aren't obligated to be familiar with a genre that they don't like.
Sure.
So
Yeah, but it
I
seems
don't
to me
mind it,
like
but it's obviously like, if you ask me about, I don't know, reggae, I could go and have the same opinion because I don't listen to reggae. So like,
yeah.
the 5 songs that I know, I could go and say, oh, it sounds the same. Like, although I wouldn't, because I know that would be, not a bad
It wouldn't
take.
be a fair critique, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it wouldn't be
but
a fair critique
yeah,
because like you haven't properly engaged with it. It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
trying to critique a book that you half read or something, or that
yeah,
you read the first
exactly.
four chapters.
Yeah, yeah.
You're talking about working with John there, and I just want to ask now. So obviously these started as songs that you've written solo. John comes in, brings his influences onto it, and they kind of expand from there. Now, what does the songwriting process look like? Is it collaborative from the get-go, or is it still very much you kind of get the germ of the idea, the base of the idea, and then you to expand beyond that, or how does that kind of work?
So so interestingly enough, with this band, uh we each write our own songs.
Yeah.
um so we don't really sit together to write. So the way we did, like, there's 5 songs on the EP, and out of those, 3 were, I wrote, and 2 he wrote. So, and then, like, the 2 that he wrote, I wrote the lyrics for it. So, it's collaborative in that way, at least. And then for my,
Which were his songs?
sorry.
Which were his songs?
Oh yeah, so Pipe Dream and Analysis Paralysis,
Perfect.
those were songs that he brought. And I brought the other 3. And um but like, he wrote his parts for my songs as well. So
Yeah.
I'm referring to as my songs, just in
I
the
understand. Yeah.
context of the conversation. Like, they're all our songs. But so that's kind of the way we do it. Like, we write the song first, and then we show it to the other person. And like, because I would have recorded, like, on my demos, it had lead guitars on the demo, uh, because you're trying to express an idea there of how the song is gonna go. But then, like, when I show a song to him, it's like, oh, should we record this song? Then, okay, cool. So I'm gonna go and, you know, rewrite my parts for that. So that's kind of how we do it, and that's how it becomes collaborative. And then, obviously, in the context of recording them, John handled the all the mixing. He handled all the, the guitar tones. So a lot of the vibe in the album, came from him. Uh, based on our common influences that we discussed. So it gets collaborative that way. But yeah, for some reason it just works. I think for us, um, to just write on our own, like we don't really sit down to play guitar together. I
What
never, I,
about
I
sorry.
never, I never did it like that with any band, to be honest. Like even my other bands that I wrote vocal lines and stuff, like it was almost never the case that we just like jamming ideas together and a song just comes into existence. It's usually the case that I get a demo and I sit down on my own at home, and then I just work on it, and then that it's brought back to the band.
What about writing song lyrics rather? So, do the lyrics kind of come from the music as an instrumental piece? You form lyrics in, or do you have concepts of what you want to sing about beforehand and then put them to the music? Like, how does that kind of order work for you?
Usually the music comes first,
Yeah.
and then the lyrics. So one thing that I do sometimes is that, because I have a, like I was saying at the start, I'm not a great guitar player. I don't consider myself to be very good. uh, and one of the things that I like with this project that I try to do was to use that weakness as a strength, in the sense that, okay, like, so if I have a technical limitation, I'm going to try to figure out a way to execute this, thinking like with the mind to, I'm gonna have to eventually play this live.
Right.
So how do I write what I want to write and express what I want to express while making it possible for me to play this with the skill that I have? Um, and that came into, as part of the style of the songwriting. So just like the way I'm going to like find chord shapes that will make it easy for me, like I don't have to move my hand as much. So um and this was actually, I mean, it can get a bit sort of nerdy guitar thing, and
That's fine.
a bit abstract when you're talking and you're not showing that to people. But what I wanted to say is that because of that sort of style, what happens is that I'm always adding extra notes with, like my fingers, they're always, even if my hand is more or less the same position, my fingers are always moving, adding these spicy notes and some odd chord shapes and stuff, because I do everything by ear. I have like almost zero theory. It's just instinct. So it's all just the sort of guided by the sound, and then
Hmm.
this process of adding these extra notes kind of inform the vocals, and the other way around. So as I'm playing, if I start humming notes, the notes that I'm humming will inform sometimes how the chord is going to go, like in terms of these movements. So these things kind of feed into each other, and sometimes that sort of humming of random words will lead to a vocal line, or to an actual lyric. um and another thing that I do is, I always, like, whenever because I've been doing this for many years now, so you start to develop methods. So you just have, like, one thing that I do is, whenever I find any word or expression or a phrase that I like in a book or in a movie, I write it down.
Yeah.
So you always have these things here and there, and then sometimes I just sit down with my phone and just expand upon that idea with whatever melody is playing in my head, and then I have that piece of lyric that later on I can just retrofit into a song. Um, so yeah, there's no single way to do this.
Hmm.
Um,
No, but I find the creative process very interesting. It's just like interesting yours in particular.
yeah, and then obviously, like, John is a much more technical guy, so it's actually, I've always, like, I was so happy that him and I ended up working together in this, because I think he complements my sort of chaotic. uh intuitive process so well because he
Yeah.
has much more knowledge. uh
Yeah, I've
like
always said that. Like, I think the best combination is someone who doesn't know much theory, but is it just goes based on instinct, and then someone who can elevate that with the theoretical side. I don't know if you agree with that, but I've noticed like plenty of artists I've spoken to over the years have kind of had that similar thing where it's like, oh, I just sort of write intuitively, and then I bring it to my guitarist or my bassist or whoever the technical maestro is in their project, and it's like they just, add the theory and the skill on top of it, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
what I created kind of uh, evolves into this
exactly.
bigger thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so that's the way it is for us. So and when he brought his instrumental songs, um I was like, yeah, cool, let's work on that. And then I wrote lyrics and vocals for that. um and I don't exactly remember how, like, with those two songs, how exactly the lyrics came about. But for me, like, when I think my brain works kind of in phases, as in like sort of deep focus. So during the period of time that we were writing these songs, I am on sort of songwriting mode, and then
Hmm.
it becomes very easy to write songs, to just sit down and, like, I'm going to write a piece of lyric here, because you're constantly working with those things that are always like cooking in your brain. um, and after that kind of finishes, you start going to something else.
Hmm.
And then it would have been much harder for me now to sit down and write a song for Tris now, because we spent a good bit of time writing them a while ago, and then we
Hmm.
recorded them. uh and then, like, we finished recording this months ago, and then there was the whole period of John working on the mix and stuff, while I was working on all the promotional aspect of it, like, sort of in advance.
Hmm.
So we've been doing all that stuff now, and then, like, I haven't been in songwriting mode for a good bit of time now, so now it would have been much harder. But while we were like in the heat of it, no, it's not too hard, because you just it's a those things are like, you're always thinking about those things, like, even like you're at work or you're out for a walk, whatever. Like, when you're in a hyper focus, at least that's how it works for me. When I'm in songwriting hyper focus, the ideas just come. So
Perfect. You've been very gracious with your time. I don't want to take too much more. I'll just ask two final questions, Gabriel, and then I'll let you get on with your evening. The first question I was going to ask is, so for this EP, To Rise You Seek the End, was it written as a concept piece? Was there a concept behind it, or was the EP a collection of songs that you guys had written together that were kind of individual in nature, and then you decided these worked together in tandem, or was the concept of the EP there from the beginning?
yeah, it's not a concept piece. Um they are they like they're literally just, we decided which were the best demos we had.
Yeah.
You know, let's grab some that I brought, let's grab some that he brought,
Yeah.
and just see which ones we are, better developed, that we can just record. So it was a much more sort of pragmatic. I wish I had a very fancy answer for that, a very poetic thing, but it was just we're just being pragmatic,
Sure.
and also, like, um and this is something that people have pointed out. It's just like that, there's a good bit of variety in the EP, in terms of, like, the songs are reasonably different to each other, although they're still recognizable as being,
Part of
from
a
the same
collective piece.
part of the
Yeah.
same thing. And that's how I like it, like, whenever, that's how I like an album to be. Like, I like to listen to an album that has different moments that are discernible,
Yeah.
as opposed to, you know you just have
It
the,
just blending in
it's just
together. I get what
blending
you're
in
saying.
together.
Yeah.
So that was also part of the, I suppose, the choice. And like you were saying, like, we started released The Long Journey first. Like, that was the first song I wrote for the project. So, um not the first
It,
song
it's
that
it's a
that
good thesis statement for it, to be honest. Like I think that's just a great idea of like, here's what this project is.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was kind of like that. Yeah, it was not the first song that I tried to write for the project, but it was the one
The
that
first
took
one you completed.
precedence. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first song that I tried to write was Abandon, the second song in the album. But then it was a much harder song to write, and I think you can tell that because it's just a bit more complicated. It has
Hmm.
much more many more different parts. But Long Journey, yeah, once I started, I think that song was the one that where we had the most of the sort of Cult of Luna influence with the vocal, and then but with the clean vocals and the shoegazy verses, clean verses that it's something I picked up from Holy Fawn a lot. It's a band that I love. They're not that famous, but yeah, good recommendation for anyone listening. Yeah, Holy Fawn, they're a fantastic band, and a big inspiration in terms of using clean vocals with um much more clean vocals than harsh vocals, than the sort of the black metal screaming. And then I think that makes the black metal screaming very effective when you only use it strategically, and that's kind of what Holy Fawn does. And it was definitely a big influence for us in that regard. So yeah, so we did the Long Journey first, and we definitely wanted to have that in the EP because, yeah, like you yourself noticed, it is a summary of everything that we do in one song. But we had like there was a song, like we had a 13-minute long song that I wanted to that I definitely would have liked to have recorded. But yeah, it would have been a much higher, much more difficult undertake than Vassal, because that was the one we did instead. Um, so yeah, so it was pragmatic, and there are like many more songs that we wrote um, that are just in the back burner for now, that we would love to record. How as time goes.
Perfect. The final thing, and I'll let you go on with your day now.
There's
The
no
final
there's
thing I
no
was
rush. We can keep talking
Oh no,
because
absolutely. I
yeah,
just, I don't want to like take up too
yeah,
much of your
yeah.
time. Well, actually, I guess I'll do a two-parter for this. So the first thing was we already kind of talked about speaking, writing in English versus Portuguese. One thing I'm always very interested in when I speak to people who write in a second language is the kind of freedom that that gives them. Because one thing I noticed, and I was wondering if this is the same for you, one kind of common theme that I've heard from people, whether it's like a Dutch band, a Norwegian band, a German band, Italian band, whatever, whenever they kind of write in English, there's sort of a freedom they get because they're less critical when it's in a second language. So there are things that, say, for example, they're writing a love song, they're like, oh, this is kind of corny if they're writing it in their native language, but when they're in English, they just want to express the emotion without having to
Mm-hmm.
worry about like, oh, this is going to sound corny or whatever. Like, you can supplement love song and corny for any kind of emotion, like just anything that makes you doubt yourself. To you, do you find that writing in English makes you less critical than you would if you're in Portuguese?
Um, that's a very interesting question, because to your point of thinking that something would sound corny in your native language. I think for some reason, I don't know if it's cultural or even like a sort of mechanical thing of the actual how the language actually sounds.
Yeah,
Um, it's just like instinctively sounds like some languages are sort of, they lend themselves to certain emotions better than others.
right,
So if you go and like, even if you were to translate to Portuguese, most rock and metal songs, like I would say like close to 90% would sound ridiculous
sure.
if you translate it to Portuguese. Like if you read that in Portuguese, it would be very silly.
Hmm.
Um, not that the content, not that what, like, but is actually
Just
silly. It's
the
just the
translation,
translation
something. Yeah,
causes that effect. So um, at the same time, um, so yeah, like it would have been much harder to write good lyrics in Portuguese, I think. Um, at the same time, it's a challenge, and I am obsessed with it when you're writing on a second language, um, to actually not sound cheesy and corny in that other language because you're not as familiar with it. So you
Yeah,
may end up saying things in uh precisely maybe for that freedom that you mentioned. Uh you end up sounding very cheesy and then you don't even realize. So I'm actually obsessed with that, like how to, I a lot of people, especially I suppose in heavy metal, they don't care much about lyrics. Whereas I'm the opposite. I very much care about lyrics, and if I listen to an album or a song and that has cheesy lyrics, unless it's a cheesy band, like, well, if it's not intentionally cheesy, that
sure.
just, even if I like the music, I will probably not enjoy that.
Hmm.
So, and there has been cases like with bands that I really like a band a prog band called Leprous. I used to love them. But the past couple of albums, it was like the lyrics have really put me off, precisely because I think they're sounding kind of corny in
Sure.
ways that maybe they weren't before. So, and obviously those guys are Norwegian, so maybe they don't realize that it's getting,
How bad it sounds.
so yeah, I think it could be a double-edged sword there. And like I always try to form sentences in a way that a native speaker would form, which again
Yeah.
is something that can get hard, because you're just not as familiar with that. So sometimes you will,
Yeah,
like, you,
especially
you
like
end
in
up sounding like Yoda, like, like you're changing the order of the words, and that sort of gives you away a bit.
yeah.
And I am very self-aware with those things. So I'm obsessed with getting the grammar right. And
Well, if it's any consolation to you, like I don't know exactly, but there's something to do with the English language that we speak in Ireland. It's called Hiberno English, and something about the way I can't remember exactly what the details is, but something about the way we structure our sentences, our syntax is sort of similar. It sort of borrows sort of grammatical rules from the Irish language.
mhm,
So oftentimes we say stuff that sounds strange to an English speaker from, say, the UK or the United States or whatever.
yeah,
And there's like little things, and it's actually difficult because I was watching a video from an Irish author. She was kind of talking about this, and she was saying she works with a British publishing house, but she's an author from Ireland, but she works with a British publishing house, and they're always giving her notes, like saying, for her, what would be an instinctive way to express an idea, they're often like, "Hey, this is kind of grammatically incorrect," and she's like, "I actually
mhm.
don't know what I'm doing wrong." So maybe if you're trying to learn English the proper way, maybe Ireland isn't the best the best
Uh,
place to learn that.
yeah, but like I completely get that, and obviously that, like, so again, yeah, that's another thing why it's challenging, because you need to find a good balance, because you also don't want to write very formal English on a metal song, like, because you know that's not even the emotion that you're trying
Yeah.
to express, and like in daily life, like,
I don't think anyone really writes like that, like no one, like even like really intellectual songwriters. I mean, I don't think they write necessarily in what's grammatically correct. I think
yeah,
it's more about emotion and expressing an idea is more
yeah, yeah,
important.
yeah. Like, you find your middle ground between what's colloquial and
Yeah,
what's, grammatically correct. And then, like, yeah, when you're not a native speaker, it's just like, I read a lot. I read books in English all the time, and I think that helps to sort of like expand my vocabulary, and just try to find more sophisticated ways of saying things, because
yeah,
I think the biggest risk that I suppose as a non-native speaker is that you end up using, like, just like words that a toddler would use because they're like the
sure.
simplest ones. They always like, making those kinds of rhymes, like flying high in the night, and then blinding
Sure.
light, my heart, it's just like, like those done to death kind of
Well,
rhyming,
if
and
you
then
ever
you
feel
can't go
bad
beyond
about
that.
if you ever feel bad about like your writing style, I would just say listen to Metallica like last two or three records and you feel better because like some of the stuff that they wrote on that, I was like, Jesus, how are you not embarrassed, James
Yeah,
Hetfield, to rewrite
yeah,
this? We're so
exactly.
fucked, shit out of luck, hardwired to self-destruct. I'm like, oh God,
Yeah,
James, I
yeah,
love you,
it's
buddy, but how are you the dude who wrote Master Puppets?
yeah. But yeah, I would like I'm not particularly a fan of Metallica, but and that would be, I suppose, one of the reasons. Just yeah, I just, but like they can get away with it because they're Metallica. They're the
Exactly.
biggest metal band in the world. So if they, if they fart in the record and say that, they'll get away with it, people will buy and like. But
Please tell me you saw Some Kind of Monster, that documentary.
I didn't. I
So
didn't. Never
they
saw
actually
it. Yeah.
show the songwriting process of Metallica when they're in the studio making Saint Anger, and like some of the lyrics, like you're just like they're like, yeah, it's like this does not sound cool, guys. Like what you're saying does not sound cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, because obviously like they cemented their style in the
Yeah,
sort of 80s, early 90s, and they were
I
very
thought they were
young.
great songwriters back then.
Yeah,
Like just
yeah,
their lyrics, like
yeah. But
like
like,
the sorry, good.
no, no, it's just like 80s thrash metal is you have this sort of juvenile thing to it in its origin. And I don't know to what degree, like in their defense, to what degree you should mature your sound as I think the maturing your sound can go either way for a lot of bands. Some bands
Yeah,
you'd have, I know the Ramones, they were like playing the same stuff
yeah.
for all those years.
Well, I
They
actually
were
defend the
active.
Ramones. They actually I've said this before on the podcast. I actually defend the Ramones because I do think you saw growth as they went. Like a song like Pet Cemetery, you wouldn't hear off like their first record or something like that. And their last record, Adios Amigos, had I thought some really interesting like instrumental pieces. But yeah, I do agree. Like
Yeah,
the
I
records
wasn't
that
I
they're
wasn't
famous for.
dismissing them. I like the
Sorry, sorry.
Ramones. Yeah,
No,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
agree. The first
yeah,
like four records or whatever are very similar to the point where like a song will start and you're like, wait, which one's this? And you might accidentally start singing the wrong song. Like
yeah.
it's
No,
that similar.
I wasn't dissing the Ramones. I like the Ramones, and
Sorry, I'm not giving you
no,
shit.
no, I had my I had my punk rock phase.
Yeah,
No, I absolutely admired the Ramones and
yeah.
and liked them.
But I
But
get what you're saying. Like the Ramones
but
and
yeah, I'm
AC/DC
just
and
saying
stuff.
that like you wouldn't want to go and see the Ramones trying to, go overly intellectual, or
Sure.
or trying to write like much more complicated songs that they were. Like they just had that style.
Yeah.
And I think, like other bands like AC/DC, like they've been, you know, making the same album for 50 years. And it's like always the same stuff, like they're still
Yeah.
singing about rock and, and I don't know, like women and booze and party, whatever. Like you see so
And they're
many.
always making songs about their penises, but
Yeah.
they're like they never just say my dick. They'll always be like my balls or heavy balls or whatever. You're like, all
So I
right.
mean, yeah. And again, I'm not dissing the AC/DC, like they're classic band. I'm just saying that yeah, some bands I suppose will choose not to mature their sound. um and maybe that's the case, I suppose, maybe with Metallica to a degree, at least in terms of the lyrics. But um and then I suppose it's up to the audience to decide, like if that's still, like, as a member of the audience, as you grow older, if you're still going to keep listening to that, or if you're going to move on to something else.
Yeah.
Like in my case, like I loved, silly, old school metal growing up as much as the next guy. And then as you grow older, like it just so happened that in my case, I ended up listening to other stuff, and not be so into that sort of vibe
Yeah.
for metal anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's stylistical choice, I suppose.
Perfect. Well, thanks very much for your time. I just the final thing I'll wrap on this. Are you playing gigs with this project? And because like one thing that's very interesting when you listen to it, I know you had session musicians play on the record, but the soundscape's very big, and obviously you can't just be performed by two people. So have you
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
thought about like the live shows and how that's going to work?
Yeah, so we absolutely want to play live. And I think I forgot to mention actually at the start when I was talking about my the bands that I played. Like I am currently active in a doom metal band called Death the Leveler. So I just yeah I should have mentioned that. So that's the band that I currently playing gigs with. So and then John isn't playing live, hasn't played any live bands for a while. So and we did try like before we sat down to record DP, we spent some good few months, the two of us trying to form a band. So our first the first thing we tried was to form a band and start, playing as a collective. It wasn't to just let's make a studio project, because at
Yeah.
the time I hadn't joined Death the Leveler yet, and I hadn't played gigs in like I don't know since the start of the pandemic. So I was eager to form a band and just do that. Then I ended up joining Death the Leveler, and that alleviated some of the pressure. And then since because we couldn't find any other members to join this band who could commit and especially couldn't find a drummer, we just decided that like it's going to be too hard to convince people to join this sort of ambitious project if we don't have anything to show. uh so we just decided, so him and I just said, let's just record the songs. um so we're finally at that point where it's finally out. um there was a lot of work with the promotional aspect of it, so that again stole time that we could sit down and start actually trying to play these songs live and form a band. So the short answer is we absolutely want to play live. We don't know when it's going to happen, because yeah, obviously we need to form a band. So we'll have to find a drummer and a bass player at least. We may have a keyboard player joining. So we don't know that for sure yet, but hopefully a friend of mine. And yeah, I'll be playing guitar and singing live, and then John will be on guitar. And we'll try to do, like, our plan is to do everything live, so and maybe not rely on backing tracks or anything for the ambience. We'll see. If we can't find a keyboard player, we may have to resort to that. We don't like, yeah, we don't know. We definitely want to, like, I am extremely excited with the prospect of playing this stuff live. At the same time, we're gonna need time to practice, like, because it's funny, like when you're recording songs, um you just get lost in the rabbit hole of adding layers and figuring out a lot of things. But after it's all done, you have to take a step back and say, well, how do I play this live now? So which parts am I going to play, or how I'm going to adapt that, and like if I'm singing and playing at the same time, how do I do this? So there will be a sort of I suppose a learning curve for ourselves, figuring this out. But we had people asking already, like, yeah, when are you guys going to play live? Like, people who are curious to see these songs in a live environment. Yeah, and like no one's more excited than we are with the idea. But we're gonna have to find, yeah, we're gonna have to see who we find that's
Who's
interested in
around?
joining. Yeah, which is always
Perfect.
like, it's always an enormous challenge, especially
Especially
as it,
drummers, man.
yeah, drummers in Dublin, or in Ireland in general, I suppose.
Yeah. Well,
It's
dude,
always,
every drummer I know plays in like two or three different bands.
yeah. And we ended up in the album, we ended up hiring a guy online that we found. It's a guy from Romania, and he did a very good job for very good rates. Lovely guy. But yeah, so because we had on the demos, like, we had programmed drums.
Yeah.
So he was able to kind of replicate that and do it better. We
Mhm.
definitely wanted to have real drums in the album, not use the programmed ones. But yeah, I mean, I suppose, like, there are bands who go and perform live with just one or two members and backing tracks for everything else. Like, I would rather not do that. Like, it would be a last resort if we
Yeah.
absolutely can't find anybody. But I would, like, if you have to hire someone to play live, if we can find someone who wants to like join the band as a band member, and I suppose that may end up being the solution as well. So we'll do whatever it takes, but we definitely want to play live.
Perfect. Well, thanks very much for your time, Gabriel. And
Thank
is
you.
there anything
Thanks
you'd
for the
like to add before we
interest.
wrap up? Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up? Anything I failed to cover? And if you want to just like plug where people can find you and all that.
Oh yeah. So well, first of all, thank you. Yeah, for the chat.
Absolutely.
It was lovely. And thanks for the interest.
Thank you.
Uh, yeah. So well, for anyone wondering there, so the band is called Trist, and it's spelled Tryste, which is an old spelling for the word tryst, like with the meaning in English, which is sort of an affair, rendezvous, something like
Mhm.
that. And it's spelled, if you're looking for this on streaming platforms, it's spelled with a space between each letter.
Yeah.
So you may not find the band
I
if
would
you
say
don't use the
just look
space.
for To Rise You Seek the End. Just look for the EP title. That's kind of the easiest way to
Yeah,
find it.
and not everybody notices that, like, to rise you seek the end is like the band name
Yeah.
is an acronym for to rise you seek the end, which
I
was
did notice that. I'm smart.
very good. Yeah, because we wanted a post sort of, it's a common thing for post rock bands to have really long names,
Yeah.
and we went through a bunch, but some of them had very bad acronyms.
Yeah.
People will, like, we know that people online will refer to those bands with
Absolutely.
acronyms because
It's
like you
just
have,
easier.
yeah, Between the Buried and Me, like those are all
Yeah.
bands that have like people always use the acronyms. So
Dude, you remind me, sir, when I was like a teenager, I was in a band with some friends. I never went anywhere, but one of the funniest things we thought would be because it's back when people still bought like physical tickets. Like now it's just on your phone,
yeah.
but like back then, like everyone, you'd have to get like a physical ticket. And we would always look at the space and I go, what would be something that would just like take up as much space on the ticket as it could? But I think they'd probably just do the ellipses or something, so they wouldn't actually print the whole thing. But I
Yeah.
always thought that'd be a good idea for a band name, just something that takes up the whole ticket space. Sorry, you were
Yeah.
saying.
No, yeah. So yeah, so we went through a few different names, and but they didn't have good acronyms. And then I had the idea of, let's just find the acronym first, and sort of retrofit some of the names, and then we ended up going for that one. And the thing that I like the most about that name is that, like, the pronunciation and the spelling is almost identical to the word triste, which is in Portuguese, and in Latin-based tongues is means sad.
Okay.
And because the music was, it actually ended up, I think, in the end, less sad than it was at first. It was
Sure.
very much more miserable when I first started it. But we still think that, like, it is overall a melancholic kind of sound.
Yeah.
So yeah, the band name has those sort of, those two meanings, like the long version, and because it means sad. So yeah, to anyone looking for the band, it's Trist, and we're on every platform, and we're on all socials as well. You can find us, yeah, just look for Trist, like I said, with the space between the letters and with a Y, and um or just look for To Rise You Seek the End, which we also use, like YouTube. I think it's youtube.com at To Rise You Seek the End, and TikTok as well. Yeah, we post a lot of content on all our socials, and yeah, the album is on Bandcamp. It's on Spotify, everywhere. So yeah.
Go to Bandcamp because they actually get paid better there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
We people were generous. We had a good run so far with Bandcamp. So yeah,
That's good to hear.
very
Yeah.
thankful. Yeah,
I think Bandcamp is kind of probably the most ethical place at the moment to get your music.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, with like, this is a niche genre, and uh, I'll be this, like, very much, go and buy the album on Bandcamp, even if I don't listen to it much. But like, for it's much more
Just to
practical to
support. Yeah.
listen to it on Spotify, but just to support and make sure I have it there.
I do the
Um,
same. Yeah. I listen to it on Spotify, but then support on Bandcamp.
yeah.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Gabriel. Enjoy
All
the
right.
rest of your evening. It was lovely chatting with you.
Thanks. Nice to meet you, Aaron. And yeah, thanks for the chat.
Perfect. Take care.
Cheers. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to that episode of Post-Burnout.com interviews. We're available wherever you get your podcasts, so we hope that you enjoyed and would consider subscribing, giving it a like on YouTube, or a rating anywhere else. We also have some exclusive episodes only available on Spotify, which features interviews with the likes of Kim Deal, Ron Mail of Sparks, Jacob Slater of Wonder Horse, Maria Kelly, Gavin Friday, and many more. So check those out if you're so inclined. Otherwise, thank you for listening and see you next time.